traversing the node, the DOM. And traversing basically means kind of going through different places. You'll see that. So as you can see here, we have the same kind of HTML from last time. So we have basically the body, right? We have section here, we have another section, we have section, and every section has an h4, which is header, and then 2 paragraphs. So what do we mean by traversing? What I mean is sometimes when you're writing the code, you will end up in like here, for example, you will end up in this paragraph, but you actually want the parent and there is no way to select the parent. You don't know even if the parent have an ID, right? Or you don't know if it has a class name, or you don't know if it's a section or main or dim. You know nothing about it. You can't individually select that, but you still want to get to it. So it's how do you get this from this paragraph to this div, or how do you get this to this, or how do you get this to this, right? So it's basically how do you move around the code without necessarily knowing what is what. So knowing the IDs, knowing the class names, knowing the tag names, knowing all the things that we have discussed in the last video. So something that is super important is to kind of understand the relationship between them. So if you think of them, what I mean by these tags is, or HTML elements, think of them as a family, right? So we have this HTML, for example. The HTML has 2 things in it. It has the header section, right? And then the body section. You can think of this as the children of HTML. So the first child of HTML would be the header, right? The second child would be the body. And it's the same. The header had this many children, and the first child is this, right? Or if you go into the body, the body has 3 children, which is section 1, section 2, section 3, and then every child has his own children in there. So the div, the body, the relationship from the body to the div is the child of body, right? But if you're here, then that body is the parent. So if you say, hey div, go to your parent, that would be the body, right? And then this would be pretty much the body would be the grandparent of it. So you would go to the parent, and then you would go to the parent's parent. But also, if you can see these 3 sections, the relationship is kind of like siblings, right? They're not parent, they share the same parent pretty much. So they are siblings. So you will use them. So that makes pretty easy, because I hope you know how family works. But at least, yeah. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing that I would like is I want to get the body, right? So let's just say, I want to get the body. So let's just say const body is equal to, boom. And here, basically we get by tag name, which returns an HTML element collection, and we get the first one, which is the body. So if we just type the body, you see this is our body here. So we have the sections and all that. But if you actually look at the end, as we talked about, we said it has children. So if you click on children, you see we have 7 children, right? Now you might be saying, wait a minute, what are all the 7 children? So it has, let's just go to like child number randomly big 4. Yes. Oh, sorry, it's the browser. So if I go here, actually the browser adds way more children to it. So I am using Grammarly, I'm using like a lot of different extensions, so they keep adding to 7. But that's basically the idea. You get it. I want to get the section because the section is super easy. So get section 1, const section 1, so boom. So now if we are in section 1, so if we say dot children in section 1, we get 3 children, and if you run, you have the first child, which this one is h4. And then you have the B, which has the first child class, and then we have the other B. So you can see, now we can say section 1 dot parent. If I say parent element, you see we get the body. So you can see how you can move around. Now, if you go to section 1, let me do this. If you go to section 1 and you say next element sibling, you see we have section 2. So when you are here, right? So we learn 2 things. We learn from the parent to the children. You can say the children, then that gets you to the children. It returns a collection of children, basically. Now you can use then you can use the index syntax as individual childs. Now we know how to get back to the parent because you just say parent element and that gets you back to the parent, which is the body. Now there is the sibling relationship. There is two things, right? There is the previous sibling, so this gives you the previous sibling in the document because the document is right from top to bottom. So this would be the previous sibling and this would be the next sibling as you guessed. So here we said next sibling, we're at section 1, that gives us section 2, next element sibling. And then if I go to previous element sibling, actually there's no, let me see what I get. Previous element sibling, that gives me null because I don't have a previous for this one, right? Section 1 is itself the first child, so there's no previous to go to. But if I was here, then it would return that section 1. So that's how you kind of move around. Something that is a little bit different that I wanted you to aware of. So in the last class, we discussed two things, right? We discussed HTML collections, right? So things you get like if you say select by class name, and the things like node list, right? Things you get with the query selectors. So HTML collection is return only HTML elements. So you would get basically a paragraph or things like that, while node list could include other things. So it could include like the comments and it could include the empty spaces. Now to kind of show you more of that, let me just turn so you can erase. Okay, so if I go to section 1, remember we have 3 children. So if I say children, we have 3. There is another property called node list. It's called like child. What is it called? See, it's called child nodes. So if you look at in the children, we have 3, right? Of course, we have 3. But if you look at the child notice, we have 7. So it's like, why is the children different from child notice? And if we open this, you see we have text here. We have H4, we have text. We have P, we have text. We have P. So we have 1, 2, 3. We have 4 redundant text. And that, if we open the first text to see what it is, scroll down here, we're like, okay, what is this? Okay, so and the value is this one. So if you recognize that that is a line space, so here in our code there is a space, right? There's a break, line break between this and this. That is why we have an element there. Actually, we're in the first one. So let me just remove all the line spaces here. So let me just literally connect all of them together, except the last one. So we would expect it to have 5 now because I deleted 2. Actually, by saving it, it doesn't let me do it. As soon as I save it, the browser does. But it includes the line breaks, right? So the children, where is it? So see. So think of like that basically. So we have in section. Yeah, okay, great. So children gives you only elements. So you only get whatever elements you have. While child nodes, right? While child nodes, while child nodes gets you the breakpoints and comments included. So if you had a comment, let me actually add the comment here. See that? And let me just refresh this a little bit. And now let me get section 1. And if you say section 1 dot child nodes, now you get 9. And if you open it, you see we have comment. So we have the text before the comment, we have the line break, and we have the comment, and then we have line break after that. So node list can contain pretty much the empty spaces. It could contain, the comments and all that, while children or HTML collection, and if you look at it, so child notice is a node list, it contains all that, while if you say if you say children, it only returns elements, HTML collections, which is the elements. Another thing is when you are going to preview, so let me go to section 1 again, and if I say next sibling, right? Now I have to specify element here. I have to say next element sibling, because if you can see here, this is section 1. The sibling is what? It's an empty line, and after that we have a comment, and after that we have section 2. So if you just say, let me actually do that. So if you just say next sibling, we get text. Of course, the text is a next sibling. It's this empty space. That's what computers do. Computers are the most literal things on the planet. So the sibling of this is the empty space, and the sibling of the empty space is the comment. So actually, if we get that, so let me get that. So if I say section 1 dot next sibling, right? That gives me the empty space. And actually, I could write down the empty space and see what it is. And we have 2 lines. We actually have, see, it's a line break. So if we go to the int, and then we say next, what do you expect if I say next siblings? Where at this, if I say next siblings, we should get the comment node. So if I say next sibling, you see, we get the section 1. So it literally, this is the next to that. So instead of just saying next sibling, we have to say next element sibling, right? Next element sibling. It works the same for the previous. If you say previous sibling, you would get the empty space. But if you say previous element sibling, right? Like if you are right now, actually we have the empty in there. So if I say, let me just say previous element, that. If I think previous also works for this because it is also the previous sibling. It's both of them. But you need to be careful and use element to get specific elements. And then if I go to like, let's go to int, or let's go to section 1, and then just say parent. So if I say parent element, right, the element part of it gives me the actual parent. Let's see if I just say parent node, what happens? I have parent node. It's actually the same because there is no empty space between, right? This is the first siblings. Another thing about it is, so now let's recap what we have learned so far. And you should basically write down this because I'm covering a ton of things in one video. So we know these are all the children of body, right? Then the body has a children and child notice. The children are only the elements, while child notice is everything, including these empty spaces and these comments. We know how to go to the first child by using pretty much that, right? Or using the indexing. We know how to go to the parent by saying parent element. We know how to go to the next sibling by saying next element sibling, because if you say next sibling, you would get the empty space or use some comment or something like that. We know how to go to previous by saying previous element siblings, not just previous. Okay, that is so good, so fine. Another thing is that when you can get the, like, remember, so we said children. So if I say children, I get these children, right? The first one, the second one, that one. Now, something really cool is you can get the first child. So if I just say first child, I get the text, right? If I open the text, it is a text node. It's the section 1 node. So you could use the first child. But as you may have guessed it, this is just a text. The first child is a text right now. So I have to, okay, let me close this. I don't know which one it is, but I'll just say section 1 dot. If you just say first child, you get the text. Now let's try something else. First element child. Now we get the h4 again, right? The first child of this div, right? The first child is actually not 4. It's the break because we break it. That's the first child. Is the text, is the empty space, and then this is the second child. So if you just say first child, you would get the empty space. But if you say first element child, you get the actual element. So always, if you want to try to get element, always use an element. So you can use, and we have the first. We also have last child. As you think, last child is empty space, so we have to say last element child. And now we get this paragraph, which is the last element child. So that's, you probably should write it down, all of it, and then the relationship is very, very clear because you can say parent, sibling, previous child, next child, children, child nodes. Yeah, that's it for this video. I hope it helped. I know it was a lot and it was very complex. So if you have any doubt or you don't understand something very clear, I would highly suggest just watching the video again, or even better, kind of running your browser and kind of playing with it, and also conceptualizing the family analogy that the whole thing is built on, right? Next sibling, previous sibling, children, parents, first child, last child, blah blah blah. Yeah, good luck and see you in the next video. Bye.